Hello, as he said, my name is Jill West, and yes, I've got a kiddo named Colton, who's 4, will be 5 next month, and a 7-year-old going on 28-year-old Carly. Some of you may know me as my alias, Jillian Wesson, which is the name that I use on Facebook. Because Rob, my husband, is a police officer, I have to have some sort of anonymity. And so if I look familiar, but the name does not sound familiar, you might know me as Jillian Wesson. I'm 40. I do live in Pueblo, married to Rob. There's my kiddos. Parent CNA for Colton. Yes, Colorado has a great program where I do get paid to be his caregiver. If you'd like to know more about that, find me. I love telling people all about that, and there are a few other states that have something similar. My background is in education. I went to school to be a teacher. I have undergrad as K-12 music, and I have 10 years of banking experience. The last part is what I want you to focus on the most. I am not a superhero or rocket scientist. So what I'm going to share with you today does not make me any sort of an incredible person. I really believe that everyone here has the same capacity as I do and as my counterparts do to accomplish what I'm going to share with you guys today. I've got a little bit of question and answer time, and really this is where you guys will need to participate. My first question, how many of you enjoyed the playground activities last night? By show of hands. Splash pad and the playground equipment, pretty incredible, right? By a show of hands, how many of you have access to something like that in your communities? Sort of, maybe, not as many of you. How many here would love to have access to something like that in your community? Perfect, love it. So I'm going to spend the next little bit of time trying to encompass the last 18 months of my life into some slides so that hopefully I can empower some of you in this room to follow in our footsteps, or in the very least, empower you to take a different step, and we'll talk about that later on. This first slide is one of the most that's compelling to us and was really our primary motivation to start what's known as the Cedar Ridge Elementary Playground Project. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is the last 18 months of our life we've been working to create an inclusive playground in our community. And we have done that in 18 months. And so I'm going to give you our plan and how we went about it, and give you some ideas on how to do that. Children with disabilities are among the world's most marginalized and excluded children. And that's not just in your community, my community in the US, that is worldwide. And it's an old statistic, but I think it still rings true today. The bottom picture there is my child in the center, and 2 of his friends on either side of him who go to school together, looking at other children playing on the playground at their school. They've been sidelined for the last several years and limited during recess to just watching others have a good time. Nearly 1 in 5 people have a disability in the US. 13% of kids enrolled in public school receive extra services for needs ranging from autism to cognitive and/or physical challenges. Yet, most playgrounds aren't built to accommodate any of them. There's a big difference between ADA accessible and inclusive playgrounds. And I'm not gonna get into a lot of the nitty-gritty with that. If you're curious, Google ADA accessible playground requirements. It might shock you to read what some of those standards are and what is considered ADA accessible. There are playgrounds all over the US and right now starting all over the world that have gone well beyond those standards to make playgrounds not only ADA accessible, but inclusive, providing things that all kids can participate in. And that was our goal. This is one of my favorite quotes from my own grandfather, and I love that I could fit this in today. There are 2 types of people in the world, the boo-hooers, those who are great at identifying and pointing out problems to everyone. You probably know some of those. Maybe you've been one from time to time. I know I have been. And the doers, those who are great at identifying and solving problems for the benefit of everyone. And so hopefully today I can encourage you to sway on the side of being a doer. This is what our playground at Cedar Ridge Elementary looked like before we started the project. So We've got pea gravel. How many of you who have a kiddo in an adaptive stroller or wheelchair have experienced pushing them through pea gravel? Super easy, right? No, not easy at all. How many of you have kiddos with a difficult gait who maybe wear AFOs, SMOs? Pea gravel easy for them to navigate through? Totally not. Maybe you have a great aunt or great uncle or grandparent parent who uses a walker. How easy is it for them to navigate pea gravel? Not super easy. You'll also notice the equipment. Do you see anything there that a kiddo with physical limitations could access? No. One of the other things I want to draw your attention to is the cement curb. Part of the challenge that a lot of playgrounds have is unintentional, but when you look for it, you're like, oh my goodness, they might have great equipment out there, but no way for a kiddo with limited mobility to actually get to it. Silly, but it happens all the time. These two questions were the questions that we got the most when we started the playground project in Pueblo West, Colorado. Why would you go through so much trouble and spend so much money on a playground that's just for disabled kids? I probably heard that question about 20 to 30 times. The first couple times, it was hard not to come unglued. I'm going to be honest with you. But each time, I would just kind of take a step back, take a deep breath, and very tactfully share the passion and the vision for the playground project. Second question, if the playground is just for disabled kids, where will my kids play? Where will other kids play? We stumbled upon something purely by accident, but it communicated everything that we wanted to tell those folks with those questions in a simple cartoon. Hopefully you can see it way in the back. Someone is shoveling the sidewalk, removing snow. And there's a kiddo in a wheelchair and some other kiddos here in the front. And the child in the wheelchair says, could you please shovel the ramp? He's working on shoveling off the stairs. And the gentleman responds, all these other kids are waiting to use the stairs. When I get through shoveling them off, then I will clear the ramp for you. And the child's response is, but if you shovel the ramp, we can all get in. And so our message that we wanted to convey, and we still are working to convey, to the rest of the world, who, for them, disability is not in their wheelhouse. For me, the biggest obstacle was realizing that people don't know what they don't know. And they're not being insensitive, they're not being rude or harsh or saying that our children don't matter. They're just not in a position of understanding because they haven't walked where we've walked. They don't have the same needs that we have. You know, a lot of people understand that their child has special needs. As their parents, we do too. And they don't know what they don't know yet. And so in many ways, when trying to motivate people to come on board with us in building this playground, we had to help educate them a little bit and share some of those things that they needed to know to get on board with us. Some of the motivating factors to get into the minds of our donors involved the why. Why is an inclusive playground beneficial, especially if they don't know someone with a disability in their own life? They're all fact-driven. They want to know what their money is going to go for. So these were some of the things that we shared with them. Studies have proven that integrated play helps develop fine and gross motor skills, receptive communication skills, cerebral functions, physical strength, coordination and balance, social skills, including independence and self-esteem. And that is for the whole gamut. Anyone who has the ability to enjoy the playground will benefit in all of those ways, whether they are a child with typical abilities or a child with multiple disabilities, a single disability, and we're talking physical, cognitive, social, emotional, sensory processing, you name it. Integrated play also gives typically able children the opportunity to experience and accept their peers with special needs as equals, teaching them vital lessons of compassion, awareness, and acceptance. Our goal is to see all kids out on a playground playing together And for all of those kids to not be, oh, look at that child over there in the wheelchair. Look at that child over there wearing AFOs. But just to see them as another kid playing and having a great time on a playground playing together. Our playground plan was to go well beyond minimum standards of ADA accessibility. Just because it has the ADA accessible label does not mean that there's anything out there for all children to use. I showed you a picture earlier on of what our playground looked like. This is what our playground will look like. As I stand before you, it's being built right now. We ground broke earlier in the month of July, and our equipment was delivered on Monday as we were leaving Colorado to come here. So installation is happening right now. I was hoping to get some pictures of what's going on, but I couldn't quite time it right with my partner of awesomeness, and I don't have anything to show you, but I might in the next days while we're here, so come and see me if you're curious. I'm gonna point out a couple pieces that I just wanna draw your attention to. I know I have a laser on this. Let me see if I can figure out how it works. Oh, nice. Technology. So everything that you see here is something that a child could play with. Not every child can access every piece. And that's a little bit unfortunate, but in a mission of having diversity on the playground, we're okay with that. This area here is what I like to call our quiet space. There are a lot of children that will shy away from a playground because of the noise. It's high sensory overload. And so they may not access what's considered the high traffic area because it's just too much. This area here has artificial turf, and all of these little play panels have high sensory activities built into them. So a sensory seeker that's into puzzles, mazes, magnetics will go crazy in there and have a great time. They can enjoy the actual texture of the ground, which is temperature controlled. I don't know if you know that about turf, but it's generally the same temperature all the time. They can lay on it, they can sit on it, they can fiddle with it. Good times. The play equipment here has lots of accessible components to individuals that might use a wheelchair or have limited mobility. There's a ramp here to access here. Across the way, we've got other panels up on top for kids to interact with. At our school, Colton has several classmates who not only have limited mobility, but they have limited use of other appendages as well. And so we tried to find things that they could even interact with using their head, using only their feet. We've got panels for individuals with visual impairments that they can actually enjoy with just their sense of touch. And then lots of things with auditory stimulus as well, musical instruments and things like that. I'm happy to share that this piece here is one of the existing pieces that you saw in the original photo. One of our other goals was to try to be as fiscally as responsible as possible. Some of our equipment was not in bad shape, so our ability to repurpose it was a huge bonus, and we also saved a lot of money doing that. The surface underneath the pieces here is considered poured-in-place rubber surfacing. That's a little bit of what you saw at the playground here, not too far from us where we were last night. What's great about it is anybody can get on it with very little difficulty, whether they have a difficult gait or use a walker or a wheelchair. Smooth surface. We've got standard swings, and here we've got 2 full support swings which are accessible with the poured-in-place surfacing as well, and a transfer area where we can transfer kiddos from their chair if they're in one into the swings. Monkey bars. This area here is all still pea gravel. Super big bummer. When we set out to start this project, we had hoped to do poured-in-place everywhere, but that would have come at an additional cost of $80,000. So we thought, okay, this area is enough. It gives access to the pieces that our kiddos would need to access the most. And kiddos that have the physical ability to enjoy the monkey bars can get to them whether there's poured-in-place there or pea gravel. One of the benefits is with poured in place surfacing with lots and lots and lots of traffic and lots and lots and lots of traction, it starts to wear. So underneath swings where kids drag their feet, it's not a very appropriate surface because it will get worn in divots pretty quickly. So that actually worked in our favor to keep the pea gravel out there. If you'd like to see this a little bit more in detail, come find me and I can share some more components with you. So why am I up here sharing all of this with you? My goal is to tell you you can do it too. Again, I'm not a superhero, I'm not a rocket scientist, I'm just a mom. And I don't have a background in doing any of this. I was just motivated to create a play area where my son could enjoy playing with his friends, and ultimately where I could take my entire family and play together. It's not fair to deny my 7-year-old the ability to play at a playground because there's nothing for her brother to do. And this was our way of creating that opportunity really for the whole family, but also for my daughter. So this is 4 easy steps for you. Number 1, form a team. Number 2, create a plan. Number 3, raise funds. And number 4, build a playground. Easy, right? Number 1, form a team. Really, who will your partners be? It's not a project I didn't encourage anybody to set out on your own to do. Support is important. Also, other ideas are important. Never at any time did I think I knew it all and had all of the ideas. And so having a partner to bounce things off of has been incredible. I wish that our team was a little bit bigger. Realistically, the project was created by myself and one other parent at the school. Our catalyst was my partner's 3rd grade daughter who came to her one day, and she was in tears, and she said, "Mom, at the playground during recess, I feel terrible. My friend Brooklyn, who is in a wheelchair, we play together for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, but then I get bored. I run off and play with the other kids, and she can just sit there and watch us play." After that conversation, Melissa sought me out because I was the mom with the cute little boy in the wheelchair. And she simply asked me, "What do you think of the playground?" And I said, "Well, it sucks. There's not anything out there for my son to do." And initially, our thought was to put in an accessible full support swing. And it didn't take long for us to realize when we were searching for grants and things to help purchase the swing, there is a lot of money out there that is available in different states, in different communities, in different regions that is just waiting to be used on projects like this. And very quickly, we discovered there was hundreds of thousands of dollars that could be accessed to create an entire playground and not just a swing for our child. Second part of step 1 is who owns the land. That's kind of a big deal. You can't just go out there and start breaking things up and putting out there whatever you want without asking the right people. So it's important to know who owns the land so that you can determine who the decision makers are with regard to that land. In our case, it was the school district and the Pueblo West Metro City District. Lastly, who could be a contributor of finances, of ideas, of networking capabilities, and of ultimate planning? That could be friends, fellow special need parents, business owners, local benefactors, media personnel, members of the community, and playground professionals. Step 2, create a plan. Make sure to have plenty of community input during this step. It's going to be crucial when seeking community buy-in and financial support. Consider forming a committee or a board. This is really important because the more buy-in that you have, the more support you have, the easier it will be to raise funds. And ultimately, the broader your network will be so that when you get down to some of the really tight pieces of, hey, can we use this land? Can we do there? What kind of permits do we need? Those folks might help you connect with those pieces so that things can get moving along a little faster. Determine what area you have to work with and what amenities are already available and accessible. For some, I saw a couple of these out there when I asked about the accessible, inclusive playgrounds. If it sort of is, great. You've got some good building blocks to build upon. You don't have to scrap a playground that's already there to start over on something new. Often you can use the pieces that are already in place and just add on to them. Determine a realistic budget that you will work toward and reasonable timelines to carry out your plan. By reasonable, you might say, hey, I want to do a multi-million-dollar playground. Awesome, good for you, I will back you up 100%, but that may be a little bit unrealistic for your community. So maybe reel it in a little bit and figure out what is workable based on the community's assets, benefactors in the area, and access to other funds. Your timeline is also really important. When Melissa and I had that conversation 18 months ago, I would have liked to have the playground that day, but that was super unrealistic. Our original goal was to have the playground in place before school started this semester. We may be about one week shy of that goal. School might begin and the playground may not be finished, but hey, 1 week is not bad. Our long-range plan was to have it finished maybe by Christmas, and I think we're gonna beat that by a few months. Select a playground professional that can share and enhance your vision. I gotta tell you, technically, we sought 4 different playground companies to work with, and we chose one of those 4. Not everybody saw our vision. There are some playground companies that are still stuck in what's considered ADA accessible, and that's enough. And then there was one other that wanted to give us every bell and whistle that was out there at a huge, huge price tag. And that was not realistic for our capabilities. So if you don't find someone to work with that you can match up with well, scrap it and go on to somebody else, because there will be someone out there. Before raising any funds, consider filing for a 501c3 or other type of nonprofit entity. Tax exempt status is helpful. Question to ask, is there an existing organization that will allow you to create your project using their TIN? That will save you a lot of time. I know in the state of Colorado, it would have taken us 3 to 4 months to apply, and that would have slowed down our timeline by that 3 or 4 month period before we could actually begin raising funds. You could use a local advocacy group, parent-teacher organization, booster club, you name it. There are other organizations and even affiliates within a community or within a school that might allow you to piggyback onto their tax ID number for the purposes of raising funds. Consider partnering with a local government agency. This could be key if you are going to go after some big money grants. Typically anything in the range of $50,000 to $75,000 or greater. Those grant providing organizations are going to want to know that their money is secure and that you're not just somebody that's going to go and take the money and run. So if you have a governing agency supporting and backing your project, it will give them confidence to write you those big fat checks, knowing that that governing agency is going to ensure that funds are not misappropriated. That's a big point. The city, county, a park and recreation district, all solid possibilities. We decided to partner with our metro district for the city of Pueblo West because they were the ones that were going to have to give us permits for the building later on. Great, now we don't have to pay for them, and we know all of the people that will be doing those inspections. Even better. Consider the needs of all children and families. Sometimes because we've got a child with special needs, we like to think that our scope is huge and that we can consider all kids. That's not always the case. Sometimes it takes stretching ourselves a little bit beyond our world and what we're accustomed to and our child's needs to realize there's other kids that are very different who have needs that are just as important as our own. I have learned so much about kids on the autism spectrum, more than I ever thought that I knew, because of this project. Crazy things that I thought I had tapped into that I had no clue about. And it was because I just asked questions, or I started to get to know some of our neighbors who had kiddos that were on the spectrum that had needs that I wasn't aware of. Step 3, raise funds. Create a motto and or a mission statement. That might be the driving force and really your catch for people to take an interest in what you're doing. Our motto is pretty obvious: all for play and play for all. It's something now that is pretty well known in our community and even through the state. A logo or a graphic that is specific to your project is helpful. Ours doesn't do a great job of explaining exactly what we're about, but it certainly does capture some of our passion. Next, create a support letter that explains the purpose and goals of the project and the need for financial support. Write something that says, hey, we need money and this is what we need it for. It should be brief and specific with a clear call to action. Consider offering contribution incentives to local businesses and organizations. Anybody with big money is going to want to know what's in it for them. The feel-good, warm and fuzzies for being part of a project like this is great, but ultimately, what else are they going to get for the purpose of their business? So marketing opportunities, promoting their business, all of those sorts of things could be a great incentive for prospective donors. Give compelling reasons for individuals, business owners, organizations, and foundations to support your project. That picture in one of the first slides with Colton in the center, I use that over and over and over and over again. And some people might say, oh, well, you're exploiting your son. You know, you're playing on people's feelings. Yeah, I am. In this situation, I was, because I really felt like that was an important picture for people to understand that there are real children in their community who are sidelined from activities that every other child can enjoy. And why is that? And what can they do about it? Cast a wide net when seeking donors. The first point there is my favorite. Everyone is a prospective donor. Everyone. Everyone. Wherever you go, you're hanging out at McDonald's in line, waiting for food. Somebody standing next to you. Hi. If you strike up a conversation with someone, that conversation is an opportunity to tell them what you're doing. And you would be amazed at how many people jumped on board and how many checks I had written on the spot from a stranger I just met 5 minutes ago. And that may not be a strength for you. If it's not obvious, I'm sort of an extrovert. And that's not something everybody is fully capable of, but that's where having partnerships with others is a strong suit in a project like this. So if that's not your bread and butter, maybe there's somebody else that has no problem approaching those conversations and getting that part done. Network within your current circle to meet new people. None of us parents in here are 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds. So in the 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years that you've been around, you've developed friendships and relationships with people. Maybe those people know prospective donors. Utilize social media, newspaper, and television media to get the word out. The first 6 months of this project, I cannot tell you how many newspaper interviews, television interviews we did, but that was really the driving force to help us bring in some of our largest dollars. People that we would not have reached outside of those avenues. Google, Google, Google. This is the strong suit of my partner, Melissa. She is an internet whiz, and she has dug up money. I swear I don't know where it's come from, but she was incredible at utilizing Google as a resource to find monies that people wanted to give to projects just like ours. Those were some of the buzzwords that she used. I'm sure there were others, but they were super helpful. Donor ideas. I could read that list to you. I'm not going to take the time because you don't want to hear me read. But some of the ones I want to point out, service providers for individuals with disabilities. We all have them. And they often compete with one another. And that is a huge motivation for them to want to get their name on your t-shirts, their name on your banner, their name on your Facebook group, whatever it is, in competition with some of the other service providers that might be around. And sometimes they've got big money that they want to share. Local community and corporate banks was another one, huge competition among them. If you're in a large community that has multiple children's hospitals, oh my gosh, you better go after that money because a lot of them have foundations built within the hospitals. Our community does not. If we were in Denver, I could have dangled in front of Children's and Rocky Mountain Hospital for Children, St. Luke's, and said, hey, one of you can be the first person to tag in and we will make you a gold partner with us at the level of $5,000. And sometimes that's enticing enough for them to jump on board. Local foundations, often you can find those just by Googling foundations within your community. Home builders and construction companies, because they're in the business of building, getting on board with a project like this is big. And we had one come up and give us some good funds. National organizations is the last one I'll touch on. Walmart, Target, Lowe's, and Packard. If you are thinking about setting out to do something like this, take note of those guys. They gave us quite a bit of money, and it was easy money. I've done a lot of donor application forms and things like that. Not too difficult. I've also written some grants in the last 18 months. A little bit more difficult. These guys, basic application, super easy, thousands of dollars. Other fundraising ideas. So this is more of the event base. How can we bring in money in kind of a one-stop shop? Discount cards, a lot of your communities probably already have these. High school football teams may have them. It's a conglomeration of a lot of fast food restaurants that offer a buy one, get one, or whatever. You buy the card for $20, the card's good for a year. There's other organizations that can do that. So if you wanted to have a playground project discount card, great opportunity. Most of the time, the benefit to the fundraiser is about 50-50. So a $20 card will earn you $10. Merchandise or candy sale, rummage sales, bake sales, craft sales, raffles, carnivals, movies, poker nights, car shows, bingo, all of these you can charge per head and make money pretty quickly in the course of a night. One of the events that we did, which still blows my mind, is an amateur wrestling night in the school's gym. Don't ask me how that happened. It was weird. It was super weird. I was having a conversation with a stranger who happened to be part of an amateur wrestling group in southern Colorado, and he said, hey, we'd like to do a show and you guys can earn all of the ticket prices. I said, okay, well, how much do you guys make? How many tickets do you guys sell? We usually have about 50 to 100 people, so I'm doing the math in my head, and we charge concessions. Okay, that's a little more money. Ultimately, we sold out for amateur wrestling in little town Pueblo West, Colorado, and had guys in spandex and luchador masks doing their show, and we pulled in almost $1,000 with very little effort on my part, and it also propelled those guys to do shows in other communities, and so it was a win-win for both of us. Think outside the box sometimes because there's some money in those boxes. T-shirt sale, Ink to the Pink People is the source that I started to use, but ultimately Custom Ink is another one. This shirt is an example of a fundraiser event that we did. We sold these shirts for $20. I think 340 of them went out all over the state of Colorado and nationally. And we raised about $1,000, and I had to do nothing. I created the shirt using their online editing software. They do all of the shipping and everything. Fun runs, walks, other competitions. In Pueblo, archery is a big deal. Pool, poker, whatever you name it. And then restaurant partnerships. I don't know if any of you have been to one of these sorts of events where you go sit down in the restaurant and say, hey, we're with the March of Dimes, and then they donate 10% of your check to that charity. There are a lot of those restaurants and communities that will partner with you to help you raise funds. To date, the Cedar Ridge Playground Project has raised over $180,000 from various fundraising events, grants, in-kind and cash contributions from individuals, small and large businesses, organizations, corporations, and foundations. 33,725 of that is cash. Most of that from a community of only 36,000 people. That number blew my mind, blew my mind. We did receive one really hefty grant through the Great Outdoors Colorado fund, and that was $110,000. That propelled us pretty significantly. But that cash was helpful because in order to receive the GoCo grant, we had to have raised $25,000 cash in hand as sort of a match funds that they required before we could even apply. Step 4, build a playground. Join other people who are just like you and me, who are building playgrounds in their communities. We're at the top there. These are just some of the others that I'm aware of that are going on right now here in the US. There are probably many more. But this is not a new thing. It's happening right now all around us. If you build it, all will play. It gives an opportunity for you to be part of a legacy beyond just what you have invested in your own child. And that is one of the things that I think has compelled me more than I thought it would, and it's not something that I thought of when I stepped out and started this challenge. But now I look at what's going on out there, and when I get home and see that playground almost finished, that playground is going to be a piece of my heart in our community forever. And that's something that is so intangible. If this is you, the next slide is for you. Okay, Jill, ain't nobody got time for that. You might say to yourself, that's all good and fine. Good for you. There's not a chance in hell I'm doing any of that. Here is one thing all of us can do. Every penny spent on a playground, which excludes children, is a penny wasted. And I cannot stress that enough. Here's the sad thing, people. In 1990, ADA required playgrounds to be updated to become ADA accessible. The really sad part is ADA at that time and still today has not built in standards for what's considered accessible. So what does that mean? Most of these communities, most of these states are not held to any particular standard to do anything about their playgrounds. But there are communities that are making updates and renovations to playgrounds that are outdated, that have equipment that's broken or it's considered unsafe. If you are aware of a playground project going on in your community, whether they're intending to make it accessible or not, in my opinion, and this may sound a little bit bossy, we have a responsibility to be a voice in that project, in that build. So if you're aware that a playground is being worked on, is being built, is being renovated, those planners need to hear your voice because they don't know what they don't know. And they may not have built in pieces that would be considered accessible, inclusive to all children. And maybe all it will take is a conversation with you for that to be in their wheelhouse, for them to make some real lasting changes that will make sure that every penny going into that playground is worthwhile. If you have an accessible, inclusive playground in your community, find out who is responsible for that build and thank them. Maybe showing that gratitude will prompt them to build more. And that's big. If you find out who bankrolled that amazing playground in your community, it might be a hospital, it might be a foundation, it might be an individual benefactor. They probably still have more money. And maybe they were a one-stop shop, hey, I'm gonna do that one playground and be out. But if they hear from us how amazing, how impactful that space is, it might propel them to build another one. This is my partner in awesomeness, Melissa. I had to include her in here because it's certainly not something that I've undertaken on my own. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. And that's all I have for you.